Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down.
Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pain.
Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down. And strap in. This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt.
Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pain.
This is gonna hurt.
It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
When our life appears chaotic, do we call a plumber? When mental burdens weigh on our shoulders like a barbell at the gym, is a social media manager required? When we're broken, is an auto mechanic the first person to call? There are specialty tasks where we find no hesitancy in calling a professional so that the job can be done correctly. However, when it comes to mental health, often we feel that we can repair ourselves. The stigma attached to mental health redemption can steer some clear of reaching out at the most critical of times. We live in a world where it is an impossibility to be a jack of all trades. The professionals are there to guide us to a solution, to make us more mentally strong by giving us coping skills and tools. They are the unsung heroes that make a difficult life a little easier. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Theresa Agostinelli to discuss the suffering of a therapist. Theresa,
my God, that took a long time to get through, didn't it?
Oh, will you stop? Theresa, I know you're a therapist. I want you to meet Dr. Asshole. Theresa has guided many people into living their best lives. Before we get started with anything, I want to throw a big shout out to our main sponsor, and that's Toyota of Hackensack. We buy our cars from Toyota Hackensack, and we don't trust many people. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. Theresa, thank you so much for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. Every week, we like to take a question from an audience member. And it's a good way to engage our audience members, but sometimes they see an angle that we don't see. So this week's social media question comes from Cyan, and it says, why is it so hard to just be happy or be content with your life? It's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's a tough question. What do you think?
Well, it's a question I do get a lot. Why can't I just be happy? And it's so funny because in my own personal life, there was a time where I just couldn't be happy. I just could not get past the past, the grief, the suffering. What's there to be happy about? What I've learned is that there are people who are just not going to be happy because they choose not to. Happiness is a choice. I have a lot of people and I will tell you the top 3 things people tell me, it's in my book. I'll be happy when I have the right mate or a different mate. I'll be happy when I have X amount of dollars in the bank.
I'll be happy when I get a podcast partner that can speak.
Okay. That could
That's
work.
one of the things I talk about all the time.
And then the third one is, these are the top 3. When I get X amount of money, when I have X partner, and when I have lost X amount of weight, have X health. What I tell people is you're not supposed to wait for those things to get happy. In other words, you have to get happy to get happy. And happiness breeds happiness.
Well, one of the things I think you're touching on is the difference between happiness and joy. All right. So happiness is very temporary. Joy is everlasting. And happiness is, I'll give you, for instance, like you may sit down to a really good meal and that meal is delicious and you may be really happy at that time. But an hour later, the happiness is faded. Happiness is fleeting.
When you're sitting on a bowl.
Yeah, when that meal is coming right at you. Thank you for being so disgusting. Mike, what do you think? We get this question. I know people in our lives have asked us this question.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people want to live other people's happiness, if you know what I'm saying. You see like a professional football player and they always say, oh, I wish I was him.
Social media.
Yeah.
Social media is a perfect example.
I don't know if I can't say if anybody, but I don't know a lot of people have a lot of inner happiness. People that are totally happy with their own lives. They always want something better for themselves and they're always striving for something better. And when that better never comes, people just aren't happy with themselves.
Because part of it, they're looking for an identity in whatever they're seeking. You know, a mate, the proper mate, is not going to make you joyful. It's not even going to make you happy. It might make you happy in the short term, but
For you, very short term.
it might make you happy, but it's not who you are, because people become invested in that desire. We see this with social media. This is what I was just getting to. So people live this beautiful Facebook life, and if you looked at them, they're living on boats and they're drinking margaritas and they're eating a perfect meal. But if you looked at their life, it's really probably jacked up.
It's called fake book.
Yeah,
Fake book.
and that's why they have filters on all these social media outlets.
I think you should use them.
I mean, how many times have we seen people like with their shirts open and they have like ripped up abs and everything, and then you see them in real life and they got this big pot belly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not what it really isn't.
It is. It's fake book.
Yeah. It's perception. And I do want to touch on the fact that happiness and joy, they can be similar. They do go hand in hand. And if you're expecting someone externally to make you happy, that's never going to happen, because you have to be happy first with yourself.
Because you don't have internal happiness.
Exactly.
If you rely on someone else to make you happy, then you don't have that, like I said, internal happiness within yourself anyway.
And then when happiness is an inside job, joy is an inside job. And when you reach that place where, you know what, I don't need external. Oops.
That's okay.
Is that
At least the cat was on.
See, it's the caffeine.
The caffeine.
The external. If you're waiting for the external to help you with the internal, then you're never going to reach that place where you feel like you've achieved total happiness or total joy. So it's never external; it's internal.
Somebody who doesn't, for me anyway, for somebody who doesn't understand your sorrow or what you're going through at that particular season of your life, they come at you, and it's almost offensive, because they come at you, hey, listen, you got a beautiful house, and you got beautiful kids, and you got a good job.
A nice dog.
Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you happy? Because they're not, you're seeking something, and they're parts of your lives. For me, I talk about primary identity. I've said it numerous times on here. So
yep, I've heard you say it.
So primary identity is really something that is unshakable, and everything else is falling underneath it. Without that primary identity, you're never going to be happy.
You said prairie fire on here a lot too. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Hashtag
yes,
prairie fire.
I've heard you say that.
Hashtag prairie fire.
Yep.
That is important.
But Kev, getting back to what you said, people say, "Oh, you have this beautiful house and you have these beautiful kids." They're not realizing the bills that come along with that either. That's always in the back of your mind. That like, how am I going to pay for this beautiful house? How am I going to pay for kid wants a bicycle?
It's no different than looking at somebody's life on Facebook.
Oh yeah, without doubt.
Yeah. So Cyan, thank you so much for sending that in. Try to send your questions in, and we will get them on the air.
That was a great question.
That was
it was
a very deep question. We got some.
We could have talked an hour on that.
Yeah,
alone.
I was thinking. Wait.
We got a very deep audience. They're about as deep as a wading pool. I'm just kidding, everybody. You know I love you. So, Professor T, that's how I know you. All right. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, so for right now, I'll start at the current. I am a licensed clinical psychotherapist. I've had a private practice for almost 20 years. I'm also a licensed and certified trauma-trained clinician. I'm with the county, the state, and I am one of 4 clinicians in our county who have the distinct pleasure of being on call when someone in law enforcement.
That's a distinct pleasure, being on call.
It is. When you have first responders, law enforcement that we deal with.
That go through traumatic incidents.
Yeah. So I'll get a call. Hey, can you talk to this girl, to this guy? So that's our CISM. I am trained in CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management. I'm also a certified coach through the John Maxwell certification, and John Maxwell team. I'm a member. He is one of the top on the globe for leadership development and leadership training. And so with that said, I'm able to bring the coaching aspect as well as the mental health and therapy to help people get to the next level. And I also happen to teach at a local university in my area, in the Philadelphia area, which allows me to bring the educational aspect. So
you're the counterpart of our very good friend, Dr. Eugene Stefanelli, who does everything that you just said,
nice.
But in New Jersey.
Okay.
but isn't, he goes out on the CISM teams. He counsels specifically, I think specifically, police officers.
Police officers, yeah.
I mean, he was our doctor. He's responsible for saving my life, and I know he did some great things for Mike
Saved
as
my
well.
life also.
So
Yeah.
it's good that there's people out there in every different state to take care of these people, because the first responders take care of everybody else, but who's going to take care of them?
Yeah.
But how did you find this? Was therapy like a calling for you, or were you good at giving advice? How did you find this job for you?
Were you just opinionated? And said,
None of the
that opinion
above.
stuck.
I want to point
none of
something
those.
out. It seems like every one of these go-to therapists in every state has a vowel at the end of their name.
It is. It's an Italian business.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Because we know people.
You got out of
I got a guy.
you got out of bricklaying and went into therapy. That's it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Your dad was a mason, right?
No, he wasn't. No, he was not. But, is it a calling? There's so many layers to that. But let me just tell you quickly, I did not aspire to be a speaker, a coach, none of that. I was born in a socioeconomically stable family, Philadelphia area. I was the youngest of four, very traumatic, dramatic, lots of
What part of Philly?
dysfunction.
What part of Philly?
South Philadelphia.
South Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So you were with all the rest of the
South
Italians.
Philly. Look at that.
With all the rest of it, you probably hung around with Vince Papali and all those people down there, right?
So we know some people.
Yeah.
I was born
That's
in
Italians. They
Yeah,
know
we know
people.
people.
Come on, Kev.
I was born in St. Agnes Hospital, and I never aspired to be a teacher or a coach or a therapist, but I found as growing up, because of the trauma and the drama in our household. All of us have had trauma and drama. I've heard your story. All of us have experienced trauma and drama and dysfunction.
You wouldn't be here if you didn't.
So we all can, and the whole world is traumatized right now. But what I was going to say about that is I learned to cope with the dysfunction by learning to self-soothe. And what I did was my little stuffed animals, my dolls, I'd go down the basement and I would pretend I was their teacher. And that was my getaway, and that was my way of making sense. And I grew up a very anxious child, a very anxious, worrywart, chronically anxious shell of a person. So I did not aspire to be a speaker. What happened was, I got married young. I got pregnant. I got married young. I was 19, and my husband died suddenly. I was 26. He died of a blood clot to the lung. And overnight, I was a widow.
Yeah.
Single mom.
Now what?
And I had a little boy who was 6. And now what? I had no job.
This is your little boy, David.
Yeah.
David, who I've spoken with. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah. You'll enjoy you'll enjoy having him. So I realized that I have no job. I have no skills. I have a high school education. And I have no friends and no support. I lived in the Pocono Mountains at the time when there was tumbleweeds blowing by. So I realized that I had a couple of choices. I was going to curl up and die, or I was going to fight this feeling. Now, with that said, lots of times I did curl up and told the Lord, if you don't take me out, then I will. I was not able to handle the grief. And
We've
the
all
suffering.
been down that road.
Yeah, and we
where
can
you
talk
just-
about that too.
It's self-pity thing where you just sit there and say, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I'm done. Like I said,
So
after my incident, I went to bed almost every night saying, if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, it probably wouldn't be a bad thing, because you just don't want to deal with it anymore.
I would
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot. I'm still hearing that a lot. But what I did was this. I realized that I spoke at my husband's funeral. I wanted to. I felt like I wanted to honor his memory, and I wanted my son to see that I was a strong person and that his dad was loved. And I did. I spoke at the funeral, and it ignited something in me because I saw that I connected with the audience. I connected with the people there, and I was able to lay my suffering out. But in the suffering, I was able to talk and to share. And I realized then that I had a connection with the audience, but I was not ready to be a speaker or a coach or a teacher. I had to invest in myself. So
Now, when you first talked, did you feel like a sense of release?
yes.
Like, just like getting it off your chest?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're very familiar with that feeling we'll go out and tell our stories. It's tough at times because it rehashes some bad feelings, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's therapy. This whole podcast is therapy for us.
Yeah.
We let our darkness out. We just did it on Instagram Live before you were in here. We let our darkness out.
Awesome.
And because otherwise, what's the other choice? We bottle it up.
Or like you said, curl up in a ball.
Yeah. And it is a choice. There are choices. Sadly, some people don't choose the right choice. We can get into that as well. I mean, the drama and the dysfunction, I'm sure I've also heard your story. I think we've all been there, but we're here and we're helping others. And fast forward to today, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to help others. And I want people to elevate. I want people to elevate. And if I can help with that, I'm going to do that. It's what I do every day.
Well, that's what we always want to do. We want to elevate. That's what we all should be aspiring to do, is to elevate each other instead of constantly putting them down and trying to stand on their head to elevate ourselves.
But, and that goes back to the social media question too. Are we elevating other people and we're not elevating ourselves?
That's a good point. That's a good point, because at what point does that desire to elevate others, when do you need to elevate yourself a little bit to bring your own self-esteem up? Yeah. Because listening to things that you listen to inside of therapy, it damages your soul a little bit.
Yeah.
So, how many times do we talk about it? First responders are set out to help other people, but they really don't help themselves.
Right. They're the worst at helping themselves.
They're worse at helping themselves.
Because they're trained to be strong. Okay. They're not trained to have mental health expertise, right? They are trained to eliminate the threat. They are trained to help people. And I find that they don't help themselves because they love what they do.
Well, physically, they don't take care of themselves. One of our sponsors is X-Body, right? So X-Body focuses on, and they do a lot of work with first responders. They focus on total body health, because without a healthy body, you're never going to have a healthy mind. You look at first responders, and they got severe gut issues. They're overweight. They're lacking in vitamins, and they work that shift work. And so if you want to check out how to get true body health, go to xbodyus.com, and they're right here in Wayne. Schedule an appointment with them. But that's an important thing for us too, that mind-body connection. Mm-hmm. And first responders, again, they're good at taking care of everybody else. And I always see this, as far as the first responder field, who's the worst at it is usually the medics. They are the worst. I mean, very few of them are what you would call a picture of health. And I'm not knocking it, because I love what they do. They're there when we need them, but they need to focus, because you can't take care of anybody else until you take care of yourself. And that's kind of where I was going before. You take care of other people. At what point do you need to elevate yourself more so than other people, just to bring yourself back up to some sort of homeostasis?
Well, first of all, what I had to do for me was go through a series of self-examination. That's what the book is all about. And
we're talking about the grid system.
Yes, the grid system.
All right. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about this in just a couple minutes.
It's a 2-step process. It helps you identify where you're stuck and why, and help you audit those thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors, and the steps necessary to change those and change them forever. And they do, and it works. And I was my own first customer, so I can tell you that it works. But here's what I found. You've got to invest in yourself before you can invest in others.
So what you're telling me is you are the Dr. Pasteur of therapists. Dr. Pasteur, when he developed the rabies vaccine, injected himself with rabies. Mm-hmm. And hey, listen, it worked.
Yeah.
It's fail or die.
Well, I wanted to know what was keeping me from getting to the next level in my relationships, in my finances, in my career. I was doing the same thing that thousands of other people were doing, and I couldn't understand, what in the world am I doing wrong? Why am I beating my head against this wall? It was my mindset. It was growing up from trauma and drama. It was all of the things I had experienced as a little girl, all the way up to a woman, a mother, a wife. And I found that it was my mindset. And I found that the reason I couldn't get past the past was because of my mindset. Those subconscious thoughts, beliefs that are in your subconscious that become your behaviors. And that's why I really believe in investing in myself, investing in yourself before you can invest in others.
And you really can't live in the past in order to get into the future.
You cannot.
You know, you could take what happened in your past, and if you keep reliving it, you're never going to take that next step forward.
So
Exactly.
you've mentioned your past a couple times. If you could pick out something in your past that you think really affected you forever into adulthood, is there something specific that
Walking in the door half hour ago and seeing you?
Jesus Christ.
I would say it was multiple traumatic experiences. My father was a very domineering father. He was the proverbial
Old school Italian.
When you crossed him, it didn't go well. If he felt that you were disrespecting him, it didn't go well. If he felt that he was being lied to, all of those things. And I remember so many nights and it's in my book, going to bed, hearing my brothers being beat. My father was abusive to my mother, to my brothers, not so much my sister and I. And
because you don't hit a woman. I'm guessing, but no.
No, I think, my sister and I just had a soft spot in my dad's heart, but I was traumatized by the things that I had seen and heard in those very early years. And so I do believe that things you suffer from, even in the womb, in utero, you hear what's going on. You're the person carrying you. What are they eating? What are they drinking? What are they ingesting? Right?
Smoking back in the day.
What are they smoking? What are they listening to? And I do believe that children they get that mental and physical and emotional nutrition by that person carrying them.
But that's part of the especially my own personal story, and it really scared me because I was such a monster. I was always afraid it was going to affect my children, and it really pushed me a little bit harder to seek some real true help. So I get that. I get that a lot because no rational parent wants to affect their children long term, and there's that fine line between trying
to affect them negatively.
Yeah,
and I'm the one who can't talk. But there's that fine line between disciplining a child properly and trying to raise good adults and really coming down on them. And I can't say I'm successful all the time. I try to be, but there's no rule book on that. There's no
some of the best lessons I learned was because of a hard slap in the ass growing up. You do something wrong, you get that smack in the ass. So there's a way of discipline, and then there's a way of abusing also.
Correct.
Well, we could do better as a society the way we train our children. I do see a lack in discipline and a lack in manners and a lack in quality parenting. But I would say that how you are, and I did research on this, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because by the time you're 2 or 3 or 4 years old, research has proven that you've downloaded enough in your mental DNA, I call it, that subconscious, you've downloaded enough to take you well into your adult years. And so many times, and think about it, your own parents and caregivers, they acted out of what they knew because of their parents and caregivers. So it's cyclical and it's generational. And until we stop the generational dysfunction, it's never going to change.
See, I've never touched my kids. I've never laid a hand on them because I had that done to me and it didn't work. It actually worked the opposite. I became a little asshole because I was hit. I'm like, well, if you're going to hit me, I'm just going to be a bigger asshole.
Right.
I'm going to deserve it.
I'm going to deserve it. If you're going to find me guilty of something, I'm really going to do it. But in that same breath, I am able to look at my children and have them bring it down. I'm able to just give them a look. And,
Good.
I'm able to give another guy a look, like cut the shit or I'm going to cut your thumbs off. That look. And usually that calms the situation down. Usually, sometimes it escalates the situation. But I don't think I'm a big believer. I don't think hitting children is the right thing to do. I just don't. There has to be some sort of threat They have to have something over their head. But would you agree with that? Is that a fair assessment?
I'm not a parenting expert, and I don't try to tell parents how to parent their children because all children are different. Some children respond better to a timeout. Some children respond better to just a little bit of a talking to. Some children respond better to a flick of the wrist, and otherwise you're going to put your finger in the socket. Are you running with a fork? There has to be a level of discipline, age appropriate and child personality appropriate.
Because every kid's different. Every person is different. What works for you might not work for me.
Yeah.
The first thing I did when I moved out of my parents' house is I ran around my apartment with scissors.
I used to tell people all the time, raise your own kids.
Yeah.
You raise your kids.
Yeah.
I'll raise my kids the way I raise them. You raise your kids the way you raise them.
Yeah. And
every kid's different.
I think you're right. Because I had 2 brothers, a sister, and myself. All 4 of us were completely different. And it's because we're all wired differently. What are we experiencing in utero? What are we experiencing when we're 2 or 3 or 4 years old, right? Parents change over the years.
And how are you channeling that?
How are you channeling that? That's a great point.
What I found,
I come up with them once in a while.
But it's a good one. We should piggyback on that.
I prefer to challenge my children, to keep them occupied, because for me, I was very bored. In kindergarten, they wanted to keep me back, and because I was so bored just sitting there, and I coloring or whatever. Mike still colors, but I just didn't want. I had no
Coloring is therapy.
Exactly.
I had no interest in coloring. I had no interest in kindergarten things. I had interest in math and English and history. Those were my interests. And once I found my interest, I was able to stay much more focused and disciplined. So with my children, and I'm not telling anybody this is the way to do it. I'm telling you what worked for my children is to keep them occupied, to keep them focused, because I think idle mind really is a bad thing for children.
An idle mind is a devil's playground.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true.
When you got into therapy, was it when you were this young, idealistic therapist, you're going to go out there and make a difference and change the world? We've all done that in every profession in the country. Was it what you thought it was?
No. So my background is social work because I wanted to change the world. I wanted to be, a voice for the voiceless, an advocate for the underdog. And I wanted to be out there making sure everybody had food in their bellies and a roof over their head and clothes on their back and education. That is not what happened.
I have a great social worker
Reality
story.
smacked you right in the face.
Yeah.
My wife had a friend who
Which is why I went into private practice.
My wife had a friend who was same mindset. Going to go out there and change the world. Social work is for this. And one day she was over the house and we're all sitting around talking and I'm talking about, I was a police officer at the time, and we're talking about end of life quality. I made the statement, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how famous you are. At the end of your life, you have no dignity.
No.
Very few times do we die like John Wayne in the old Westerns with famous last words. It doesn't happen like that. Usually you shit your pants. Usually everybody's walking in. You're surrounded by people naked, and you're really at your worst.
How many DOAs have you gone on? And not one person had a smile on their face.
So this woman who really had no real world experience was trying to tell me, no, it's not like that. We can give them dignity at the end of their life. We can give them dignity. I said, you can try, but when you're at your last moments and you're just getting off the toilet, there's no dignity in that. Couple years after that, when she was out in the field, she came back to me and said, you know what, you were right. You were right. And I said, I know, I've seen it. You go to one call and somebody's grandmother is standing there with no shirt on, and you go to the next call and somebody's grandfather's standing there with no pants on.
Yeah, I've heard those stories from my son.
I've seen far too many last breaths, and
yes,
there was
pain.
No dignity in any of that.
Pain, crying,
yep,
fear, all of those things. Now, how did you deal with that as a new therapist?
I was very emotionally challenged. And I'm a pretty strong girl. I'm a strong woman. I've been through a lot. I like to call myself somebody who is grace with grit. But there were certain clients or families that I had, that I was responsible for that really kind of tugged at my heart. So how I handled it was I would turn it inward, as I did everything as a little child. And I would learn how to cope with it and process it. And I'm the kind of person that needs to be alone to process. I need to be walking out in nature. Some people like to go sit at the bar and laugh with friends, or go to a party, or go visit friends, or phone a friend. I'm not like that. I need to be by myself.
But that's a form of anesthetation. I think that's
being
a word.
alone.
Being just to anesthetize the feelings that you're going through at that particular time. Not being alone, but going to the bar, being out with friends.
We can get into that too.
Yeah, that's like you're pushing that stuff back.
Yeah.
And trying to change the mood.
Right.
But
eventually getting temporary relief.
Eventually, you got to deal with things head on. Correct.
But what I was going to say was
Prairie fire.
Prairie fire.
Prairie fire.
I like that.
Hashtag prairie fire.
Episode 9.
I've hashtagged that, just so you know.
All right. I will not hashtag your hashtag.
Oh, you can share it.
Okay.
You can share it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just getting back to that, I mean, episode 9. If you
That's his episode, just so you know.
All right. Episode 9. I'm making
Professor
a
T.
Now, let me clarify what I was saying. I learned. I mean, that's why I continually up-leveled in my education, because people ask me that all the time. I'm trained. Now, you put me in a domestic violence situation, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not trained in that. But I'm trained with mental health. I'm trained with suffering. I'm trained with grief. I'm trained with trauma. So as you grow, as you go, you learn how to handle those situations. And as you age, right, you learn as you go. So it has a lot to do with your education and investing in yourself. You learn how to get through all of those things. And yeah, there were nights I went home and just cried my eyeballs out, knowing that that child is going back into that home, or that woman is going back to that marriage, or that man is going back to that job. Those are things that never leave your memory. Being with someone when they are facing the death of a child or a parent or a spouse.
I have seen that. Yes, that is rough.
And I found that there are certain things that I took home with, but that's part of life. That's part of human nature. We're human. We hurt when people hurt. That's why we do what we do. You're doing what you do. You do what you do. I do what I do, because we genuinely care. Now, if it's affecting your health, if it's affecting your family, then it's time maybe to think about getting professional help as a professional.
Correct.
Or taking a break.
You know, just touching on what you said before, when you see someone when they know what the outcome is going to be. I ran into that last week.
Oh yeah.
Found out a friend of mine I've known for years has pretty much inoperable cancer. And I went to see him the other day, and he said, "I'm just playing a waiting game now."
So how did you deal with that?
Wow.
Did you?
So
did you?
sorry.
Run
I just want to say, Phil, we're all pulling for you, man.
Did you run to the bar?
No. What I did is I went out in the hallway and hugged a friend that I went there with, and we both cried.
Should have went to the Grand Saloon. We've been to, they should have taken you out to the Grand Saloon. It's one of our sponsors, 940 Van Houten Ave.
Okay.
Grand Saloon. I'm not saying run to the bar and run away from your problems,
No.
but at least there you get
But you
some
can run away for some food.
You get some friendly
Well, I was going to
conversation.
say maybe, another time to come up here and do another show.
Oh,
or,
yeah, absolutely.
A mother and son.
We'll meet early, and we'll go out to dinner.
Meet early and
Meet
stay
early.
late.
And the next time we'll bring Charlie, because
Yes,
Charlie and
Charlie.
Professor T know each other. So it's an odd thing, because when the idealism of what you thought it was, it's really a dream killer. I found this when I first got out of college. I wanted to be a teacher, and I was a very idealistic teacher. I was going to go out there and I was going to sculpt these young minds. And then when I got into it and I realized what the other teachers were like, you son of a bitches, I hate this job. I hated it. And I woke up one morning, and this is something that I just had a conversation with somebody today. I hated that job so much. I woke up and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I went in and I put in my note to say at the end of the year, I will no longer be teaching. So when we get into these bad spots and this idealism of your professions start to leave us, at what point do you think it goes back to the social media question. You can just walk away from these jobs. you can just walk away from these jobs. It's the easiest solution. If your therapy is hurting your soul or police work is hurting our soul, why can't you just quit and find something that's a true love? Because what's the sense of being unhappy? But you found a different direction. You do a lot of focus on military and first responders. How did you reach there? Or we're just so messed up that you'll have an everlasting
I was
set
going
of
to say
business.
there's an influx of work coming that way. So
It's like being a mortician. You will never run out of clients.
Yeah.
So how did you find that path?
Thank you for that question. And that is like, that is my passion. So I got a job. One of my very first jobs was a drug and alcohol therapist in a local hospital in our area. And
Big surprise you ran into first responders.
no, actually did not run into first responders. And so there was one of my mentors there who was showing me the ropes and helping me preparing to get my clinical licensure. We're still friends today. He said that I'm starting this chaplains organization. It's a nonprofit organization. We're going to specifically help first responders, law enforcement. I would like for you to become a part of this team for the mental health aspect. I think you would be good at it. And so I became a member. My son happened to he was working for State Farm at the time. But over a series of events, my son...
His name's not Jake, is it?
I was going to say your
No.
other son, Jake.
That's funny. My son ended up working for the sheriff's department in our county. And then I just started meeting different people and I joined this organization. And it's been over 8 years I've been a part of this organization. But that's how I got involved. I started seeing the other side of things, how the law enforcement, the first responders suffer, what they're going through. And my heart just broke because we started reaching out to them. We work with all 64 police departments in our area, as well as the 911 center, emergency services, first responders, fire, EMTs. And I just saw how they were suffering and they had nobody to talk to. Because here's what I want to say. This is the crux of why I'm passionate about law enforcement. Because they don't want to tell anybody they're suffering. Then they're afraid it's going to go on their record. Then they're afraid they're going to be put into a psych unit. Then they're afraid they're going to lose their job. Then they're afraid they're going to have to take medication. Then they're afraid everybody's going to think that they're weak.
Damn, I got every one of these.
Yeah, exactly.
I got every one of them.
That's our big problem with mental health issues these days in specifically law enforcement, first responders in general. They're afraid to talk to someone because now they're going to be pigeonholed.
Stigmatized.
They're going to be that guy with the problem. You
Yep.
know, they're afraid to, one of the most emasculating things is they come and take your gun away from you. It could be the most emasculating thing to a cop.
Yeah.
You know, and nobody wants to go get the help they need because they're afraid of, like Kevin said, being stigmatized.
And that's
They
why
are.
I talk about dropping the D in the PTSD. And
Yeah.
I know the D is there for billing purposes and treatment purposes and diagnosis purposes. However, when you put that D on the end of post-traumatic stress, you stigmatize it. And as we just talked about, people are going to be very hesitant to go seek help. And we want to try to get rid of that hesitancy. We've said this before on this podcast. If we break our arm, we don't have calcium bone deficiency disorder. We have a broken arm. We have an injury. Once we start seeing post-traumatic stress as more of an injury and not as a disorder, that can be cured, just like a broken arm can heal. Mental health can be cured. And I think that's something that's so important for
It's vital.
Right. Once you're stuck in that mental bubble, you can get out of it and you can go back to work. You're not going to lose your career. I think it's changing. I know when Mike and I were on, it wasn't. That was a real worry that we had.
Okay. I don't like to use the word cured because to me that connotates a sickness, a disease. I don't use the word
A disorder.
cured. Thank you.
Mm.
So
So we got to erase. Now we got to get rid of cured. I'm gonna be stuck with like the and podcast.
Okay. Because they're also using the word post-traumatic stress syndrome. Okay. Do you have a syndrome?
I said change the D in PTSD to damage. It's post-traumatic stress damage.
Okay. But why do we need to call anything anything?
Because
Right.
everything needs a label these days.
Because everything needs a label these days because we want to be able, in our minds, we want to be able to put it in a box with a bow on it and have closure and make it make sense.
Or use it as a crutch.
And listen, I worked in corporate. I saw insurance companies make billions of dollars. I saw hospitals make millions of dollars. Now, this is where lots of therapists and doctors and colleagues part ways with me. Sometimes they just want you to stay sick, stay unhealthy, okay? Stay mentally challenged, whatever words you want to use.
It's mentally challenged.
Okay, so that's why we put a label on it because, and this is another reason why I stopped taking insurance, because I don't want all right, I'm not going to go down this road because that's not this podcast. That's another
podcast.
show. But what I found was I have to bill for something. People would, I want to use my insurance so that I don't have to pay you, or I only have to pay you $5. Well, I have to diagnose you with something. Well, I don't want you to diagnose me with something. Well, I have to if you want to use your insurance. Okay. Right. So part A is let's get away from trying to make sense of everything and put a label on it. Okay. There are things in life that we don't need to label. It's a mindset. It's in the book. I've worked with people. They got off medication. I worked with people who had PTSD, schizophrenia, anxiety, depression. They're just labels. They're terms. Okay. You can work through them. We're human. We suffer. We hurt.
I think the most important thing you just said there, we can work through them. You're not stuck here forever. Forever is a long term.
Yeah.
It's a overwhelming term to think about. Yeah. And I think that's why it's important that first responders need somebody like you to show them that you can get through this.
And we call that normalization. You normalize the feelings. And that's why I decided when I went in with this organization that I've been with for 8 years and then got certified in trauma and stress management for first responders, what I found was they responded well when I said, just give them my number. They can come to my office. They can call me on the phone. We can have a Zoom, a FaceTime. Let's talk. How you doing? No money exchanged, no papers filled out, just your name. And, in case I need to know, medication or who do I need to call if something happens. And I found that gave these guys and girls the freedom to feel like, okay, I can sit here and breathe. I can say how I feel. And then when I'm able to say, you know what? I had a guy in here the other day. I had a girl in here the other day going through the same thing.
Because that's outside the spectrum of the job itself. It's not bringing the insurance involved in it. It's not bringing their department involved in it. You could do it on a one-on-one basis and nobody knows they have to talk to.
That's right.
So there's no, like Kevin said, no stigmatization.
That word.
Stigmatization.
But here, let me finish my statement real quick before I forget. I don't therapize, okay? I love that word. I made it up.
Therapize.
I don't even know if it's a word.
It sounds good.
But
it is now.
Here's what I tell them. We're not here for therapy. We're just here to talk. I might give you some pointers. Coaching. I'm coaching. I have a coach. I have coaches, mentors, right? We normalize it and we don't let them feel like they're crazy or bad people. You're
I hate
human.
That word crazy. I hate it.
Yeah, you're human. You're human. You're human. We're human. We feel things. It's okay. If you are in law enforcement first responders and you're not feeling some type of way when you drag a body out of a fire, or then you're not human.
Then you're crazy.
That's
where
what
the crazy comes in.
I'm glad you're here because you are feeling this way. That's why you're in the game. You're in it for the love of the game, love of humanity. And this is what I tell people, especially with law enforcement. The number one thing I hear a lot of times when they're in the midst of the crap, I think it's time for me to quit. Do you think I should quit? No. You just hit a bump. We don't think about quitting and we don't argue with God. Because when you're suffering, when you are in the midst of the crap, it's not the time to evaluate your faith or your job. It's time to just
stay in your lane and focus on what you got to
focus on. Stay in your lane, focus on what you have to focus on, and realize that it will pass.
Now, if you quit at the worst time, then it's never going to get better.
It will not get better. And you'll never know what you could have become.
Exactly. Yep.
Now, you've first responders in general and military are type A personalities, and they can become belligerent at times. You being and I hate to say,
adamant instead of
Passionate.
I'm belligerent. No,
Passionate?
I get
Passionate.
belligerent when I get uncomfortable. That's why I use that term.
But you can't
Being
spell
a
it.
female, and this, forget about gender roles. You have somebody sitting in front of you, especially a male. Have you ever felt threatened, where you felt uncomfortable or unsafe?
Never with law enforcement or a first responder. Not ever once. I'm treated with the utmost respect. They're hurting. They know it. They know they're there of their own free will. They know that they're there for help, and they know that I'm not going to charge them. I'm not calling their chief, their higher ups.
You mean police and first responders aren't maniacs like the media makes them out to be?
None of them. They have hearts of
Well,
gold.
you know, the reason I think they're like that with you is because they're going there willingly. They're not sent to you by their department.
Some of them have been.
You know,
Some of their jobs are on the line if they don't get help.
You know, when you're sent there by your department,
Yeah.
now you think, she's just a rat for the department,
Well,
you know, and they're not going to open up. But if they go there willingly, they're going to open up to you.
There are certain therapists in this world who their scruples are in question. Mike and I have, there's one guy in particular, and I don't even have to tell Mike who it is. He'll know his name. We'll never say it on air because he'll probably sue us.
Okay, don't.
I damn near threw him out the window. I know Mike damn near threw him out the window because he said some very offensive things and he had no idea what he was doing, nor did you can tell when somebody cares.
Because we were sent to him by our department.
Correct.
It wasn't until we met, like you said, Dr. Stefanelli, who we went there willingly.
Yeah.
And that's when things started getting better for me.
But that's good though to have somebody in another state, and I'd love to have this group of individuals such as yourself in every state to say, hey, you know what? I can't help you, but talk to this person. It's a person we trust. It's a person who knows first responders because, and just getting back to Toyota of Hackensack, one of the reasons that I feel comfortable recommending Toyota Hackensack is because I use them. I trust them. And that's how the first responder and military world deals with things like, hey, I got a guy. I got a girl. I got a person for you to go see. Because it's all about trust. Because if you get first responders, number one, you're always going to be busy. Always. But they're going to feel, you know, okay, well, I'm going off the recommendation of Mike here and go see Professor T. She'll take care of you and she'll understand.
Absolutely. And let me give you this one story. In our area, there's this place called Death Alley, and it's where the train comes. And a lot of people have ended their life by standing in front of that train. And this was just recently, maybe a year ago. Couple of new first responders got the call, and when they got on scene, the person who decided to end their life, I don't have to tell you, stuff was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They explode when they get hit by trains.
The kid was 18. He just became, just like a junior EMT, right? And his superior told him to stay back. He wanted to see, so he did. Traumatized. There was 4 of them, and I saw each of them separately. And then I said, well, why don't you guys come back? You can all sit in my office. We'll just talk. It's not therapy. We're just talking. Because I wanted to normalize the feeling, and I wanted them to bring people they were comfortable with. And so we were talking, and here's what we did. I said, do you have pictures? And they said, yeah, we do. And I said, well, let me see them. And they said, you don't want to see them. I said, yeah, let me see them. And I looked, heartbreaking, because I'm feeling what they're feeling. Now let me see these pictures because I want to see what they saw. Now I am not saying that what I saw is equal to what they were experiencing, but I want them to know, like, let's talk about it. And what's that? That's a foot. Oh, wow. How'd you feel when you saw that? What's that? Believe it or not, it's an eyeball. It was for these, and they're kids. I'm telling you, the one was 18, one was 22. They were just in that cusp. And the one thing they said was the smell.
The smell of a dead body is,
Yeah.
there's truth to that.
Guts and the brains.
And blood.
And blood, yes. So here's what I did. I got some candles that I keep on my desk, and I said, smell this. What's it smell like? What's it smell like?
Blood flavored.
No. But smell is an extremely powerful sense that we have, smell.
Yes.
And so what I helped them to do was, on your way home, go get some peppermint, go get something, go to the store and buy some candles. And whenever you start getting anxious or you start going back into that moment, grab a candle or grab the mint and just smell it for a few minutes. Something as simple as that can
That is
help.
great.
That is great
advice.
idea. Yeah.
Because one of my cousins, his name's Freddie. I won't give his last name out of respect for him, but he was one of the Navy divers at the USS Cole when it was bombed in Yemen, and it really jacked him up because he had to. When the bomb went off, one of the sailors who was there got fused to the hull. It exploded with such force that it fused them to the metal. So in order to retrieve the body, they had the acetylene torch out that piece of the hull. And to this day, he tells me, because I see him all the time, he tells me he can still smell the burning flesh. Yes. And that's what gets him, and that's what keeps him up at night. I'm going to pass that on to Freddie. I'm going to really pass that on. And he's down. He's actually down closer to you.
Oh, good.
Maybe even
Please
send him.
do.
Maybe even send him to you.
Send him my way. You know, guys, I've had the pleasure of working with so many first responders over the years. And this is one thing I tell them. You're never going to unsee what you saw. You will never unsmell what you smelled. You'll never unfeel what you felt. One case, a veteran chief of police, sergeant, he still to this day has nightmares because the incident of going on a call and a lady coming out with a baby. The baby died in his arms.
Baby not breathing.
Baby in a diaper. Okay, this is a big, strong, single guy, right? He could break people in half like a pencil.
Is this the same guy that we know mutually?
No,
Okay.
it's not. The point is this. I worked with him for quite a while. And although you don't unsee, you don't unsmell, you don't unfeel, you don't unknow that, you can get through it with proper help, right? But
Guidance.
to this day, it still bugs them. It's still, and that's what I think the one thing for first responders, that's the one thing, hands down, they all tell me. It's when it's a kid, a baby, a child, I think about my own children. I think about my own wife. I think about my own kids.
We say it all the time. You put your own kid's face on that child.
Yes.
So how does this fit into the grid system?
So the grid system, it fits into the fact that there's part of that. So many times I've had people come to me and say, look, my partner, my spouse said, you're either getting help or you're getting out. You're getting help or you're getting divorced, So I've had to work with people with their mindset. Okay. And one of the things about mindset, again, with the label, we don't have to label stuff. We all go through stuff. It's how you look at it. Things don't mean things.
So I shouldn't call him an asshole.
Again.
Should not.
Well, listen, that's your name for this episode.
No.
Since you broke my chop so
You
bad.
labeled me.
But this book
No
is
label.
This book is interesting because I've read portions of it. I haven't because I only got it on Monday. You take your own life experience in here, and I think that this is important. It's something I really want to touch on with this grid system. You take your own life experience and then you make it applicable to whatever life-changing attitude. And what that does for somebody like me, if you were to come here and not have any life experience with some of the trauma that you're dealing I would be less.
We'd say you're full of shit.
Yeah, I was trying to dance around that, but that's essentially true.
FOS.
Yeah. You're full of it. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand, but you actually do understand, and you explain it quite good in here, quite articulately.
Yeah.
So this book is more of a love letter to how you overcame your trauma and how other people can apply it to their own lives,
as well as other people's stories that are in there. It's duplicatable. Whether you're a first responder or a parent or a professional athlete or $1 million company owner or a single mother or a single father or a college student, because the mindset is the mindset. Okay. We are all human. We all put our pants on the same way. Okay. We all were born, right? And so
he was hatched.
he was hatched.
The buzzard brought him.
Don't play into his game. Please.
That is funny. That's funny. That's another writer downer. But we're all humans. So no matter what sector you're in, your mindset is your mindset. And I'm going to give you an example. So first of all, I have so many examples, but I want to be careful. All right. First of all, if you feel that winter is horrible, I hate winter, it's cold, it's dark early, I can't stand it. You're not wrong. But maybe you love winter. I love skiing. I love going sledding. I love the snow. I love cold weather. So neither one of you are wrong. It's your feeling.
It's your perspective.
It's okay. It's your perspective. Perspective is everything, no matter what sector you're in. I've worked with people who've lost children. I've never lost a child. I mean, my son's a cop. I'm every night praying to God that, he's going to be okay, right? You never know what to expect. I can't say that I understand the feeling, but I know that the mindset has the ability to overcome that. What are you going to do with it that matters? Okay, what are you going to do with what you're going through? And I find that people who succeed in life, in relationships, business, people who succeed are the ones who have what I call resilience. That mental muscle of resilience is what I teach. Resilience, the ability to overcome anything with a mental toughness. Does it mean you're not going to suffer? No, but it means you're going to get through it. Instead of allowing your obstacles to roll over you like a boulder, you allow the obstacles for you to stand on top of the boulder.
And we talk about resilience all the time. That's the way to get through anything, though.
Mental muscle. I like that. I like that term, mental muscle.
It is a mental muscle, and you have to flex your muscle. How do you go to the gym and gain muscle? Right? You gotta work
Mike.
out.
Oh, you haven't done that yet.
But isn't it true that in order to get muscles, you have it's push and pull and tension, right? So if you're not suffering, if you're not going through anything, how are you going to gain resilience?
And again, be resilient in the gym.
So
Push through all that pain and suffering and keep going.
the strongest people in the gym, the main principle to learn is time under tension.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, time under tension.
That.
Time under tension, TUT. And the same goes for mental muscle, time under tension. So people who have lived their lives under tension have the ability, with proper help, to be the strongest mental people out there. Would you agree?
Yes, you can. And I have found that the people who are the most successful tapped into that resilience and said, nothing is going to stop me on my journey.
So where do we find this grid system book?
You can find it on my website. It's on Amazon.
What's your website?
Yeah.
GlenMillsCC.com.
Okay.
GlenMillsCC.com.
All right. And I know you're on Instagram,
I'm on Instagram,
Facebook. All right. So
LinkedIn.
why don't you give them out?
Okay. So on LinkedIn, I'm Professor Theresa Agostinelli. On Facebook, Agostinelli.
Yes.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, Professor Theresa Agostinelli. Facebook, Theresa Marie. And Instagram, TheresaMarie.coach.
Yes. Because I had a tough time finding you at first.
Yeah, a lot of people are having a tough time finding me because I have so many different layers and levels, and I've been evolving, so I've got to get that all under control.
How do you keep all those different names? Yeah. Listen, if I'm on I'm only on Instagram. But if I was on Facebook and I had to use a different name, I'd never be able to find myself.
Well, I do find people who are like, Happy Strawberries 45789. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my friend Mary that, I know who lives down the street. So people have different handles, I call it. But yeah, the book is something that I'm very proud of. And here's why I'm so proud of it. And I don't know how much time we have, but this is what we're going to
be coming to the end soon. So,
okay.
But
so when my last remarks would be why the book is out when it is.
okay, why don't you let us know?
So that book has been in the making for almost 20 years because I've been chronicling things that I've gone through and chronicling how I've been helping people and chronicling my personal professional development and education and research. And I found that, time goes by and then COVID hit. The book was just in the computer. And my parents were always asking me, where's the book? When's the book? When's the book going to be read? When's the book going to be read? And it's coming. My mother passed away on November 19th. My mother had dementia and Alzheimer's. And I was with my mother. I lived across the street from my parents. My two brothers passed away. My sister lives in northeastern Pennsylvania. And I was with my parents all the time. And my mother passed away. She passed away peacefully, but it was horrible. I lost my mother twice, when she was diagnosed, and then she started forgetting who she was, who we were.
Terrible disease.
Horrifying. My mother would communicate with me through her eyes. I knew she knew who I was, and I knew that she was cheering for me. And she passed away. My father got COVID, so we canceled my mother's funeral. My father has COVID. He's in the hospital. He gets out of the hospital. My father goes back in the hospital, and on Christmas Day, 5 weeks later, I'm in the hospital. My father is dying, and the hospital's saying, your father's not going to live. The COVID has attacked his lungs. He had prior existing conditions. I left the hospital without my father. So both of my parents passed away within 5 weeks of each other. I was determined. That was the kick in the ass. It really was the kick in the ass. You know what? I lost my two parents, my two rocks. And no matter what my father may have been in the past, he made peace with that. He made peace with me. He made peace with us. And we were okay. And I realized that they never got to see this book. So I made some inquiries, and lo and behold, the book gets published. My publisher calls me on June 10th, says your book is live. Your ebook is live. That was my dad's birthday.
Coincidence.
No.
Serendipity.
No, it's not coincidence. There's
That's
a
a plan.
reason behind that.
That's a plan. We talk about
There's
that.
a reason behind that.
So now more than ever, I want to leave a legacy. My parents left a legacy. They were married 68 years. That's rare.
Yeah.
And I want to leave that legacy. And I want to help as many people as I can. And I want to help people break the stigma, break the cycle, break the patterns, live their best life, no matter what the hell you've been through, no matter what you're experiencing, no matter who you are, no matter how bad it's been, no matter how bad it is, you have the ability to overcome anything simply by training your mind to
You
overcome
can get
it.
through this.
Because you were created the highest form of creation. We are created as the highest form of creation. We are created to do and be and have everything we were created for by the great creator. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Normally, at the end of the show, I ask you what your sufferings taught you, but I think you just answered that whole question.
In a
There's no
nutshell.
reason to answer it.
But just getting back to that, though, I tell people all the time, no matter how bad today is, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yes.
It could be worse, right? No.
And you know what? I love that because I talk globally. I'm an international speaker. Okay. Thank you, COVID, because I ended up talking to people across the globe through being interviewed on podcasts and on Facebook and all kinds of things. Here's what I learned. I love this. I tell it to people all the time. Do you know what? Okay, what time is it now? Do you know it's tomorrow somewhere? So no matter how we feel right now, someone else is living tomorrow. Tomorrow came for them. Tomorrow will come for us.
The sun will also rise tomorrow.
Yeah. So always remember, it's tomorrow somewhere.
Right.
So you can get through it. No matter what you've been through, no matter who you've lost, what you've lost, how you've lost it, you can, you will, you must overcome.
You know, it's funny. You get that question all the time. How you doing? I tell people all the time, I woke up. I don't set the bar too high. I woke up. As long as I wake up, I know I can take on a day.
Yeah.
I'll worry about tomorrow when it gets
Yeah.
there.
When people ask you how you're doing, though, it's a rhetorical question. There's only two proper answers to that. It's either fine or great. And if you're not good, the answer is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was at my worst, people would ask me that, and I would be like, do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Because if you really want to know, sit down. I'm going to tell you.
Right.
And then you're going to walk away. Okay. So don't ask me how I'm doing.
They'll
I'm
start
gonna-
looking, look at that. Look at the time.
I've seen that. I've seen that. And that's another thing with helping first responders. They just need to talk to somebody, okay? They don't always want to tell their spouse or their partner or their chief.
Sometimes you can't.
They can't.
You don't understand.
And they don't need to take that home.
Yeah.
And that I have the shoulders for that. I have the broad shoulders to sit and help you make sense of what you're going through, get you back on the job until you're ready to make that decision. You don't have to make it now, but I help people get back on the job because they want to get back on the job. They want to do what they love to do.
Before we wrap this up, though, I just want to say Dr. T had some of the caffeine before.
Well, that's why the words are going so fast.
She had some caffeine, and she said, I may
It was
order some.
great.
last night."
Yeah,
I will order some.
It's much better than putting that garbage in your body.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And that's a really good point.
I appreciate you coming all
Thank
this
you
way.
for having me.
I appreciate what you do. Coming from a first responder, I appreciate what you do. I wish there was more people like you in this world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're welcome back anytime. So when your next book comes out, you have to make sure you come in here and we will hit the Grand Saloon. We'll maybe have a spa day at X-Body.
We'll make a whole day out of it.
So don't forget, the book is The Grid System by Theresa Agostinelli.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
See how I got that right?
You're a quick learner.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the
Yes.
Suffering
Thank
Podcast.
you.
But before we go, let's think about all the stuff that we learned today. Therapize is a new word that I just learned today. Happiness is a choice. Face that suffering head on, but most importantly, you can get through this.
And grace with grit.
Grace with grit.
She said she was grace with grit.
Grace with
And
grit.
she is.
We're in presence of grace with grit.
Yes.
That's going to do it
Thank
for this
you.
episode of the Suffering Podcast,
Awesome
The
show,
Suffering
guys.
of a Therapist. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Follow Mike at Mike_Failace. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. Don't forget to follow The Suffering Podcast at The Suffering Podcast. And we will see you on the next episode. And as my favorite Saturday Night Live news correspondent would do, Dennis Miller, that's going to wrap this episode.